All right, welcome to the Duke UNC Preview. Today I have with me Riley Davis. Riley does it all. He is a writer and a podcaster for Heat Check College Basketball on Sleepers Media. You can find him in the Field of 68. The pod is the roof. Riley, I appreciate you coming on, brother, to talk some Duke UNC.
Yeah, man, it's good to chop it up with you. I said this off air, but J Man is one of the elusive Duke accounts that I would say is a great follow. Love the film breakdowns, love the content that you do. It's always good when you can find people who are like they will like hardcore still cheer for their team, but can also be honest in their analysis as well, which I get called. I hear it from both sides of UNC fans. I've heard I'm way too negative. I've heard I'm too positive. I like to think that's a good thing. Hopefully I can be in between, but I think you do a really good job of that. So I'm happy to come on this pod and talk a little bit of hoops.
Hey, I appreciate that, brother. And likewise, it's always nice to have a civil conversation of Duke UNC where, the guns aren't drawn over here on enemy lines talking about the rivalry. You're a great follow as well. And I highly recommend everybody check out Riley's work. He does a fantastic job. And you got a lot to talk about here. Your boys have been rolling. They've won 6 in a row. What have you seen in this win streak with UNC?
Man, offense, 3-point shooting, ball movement, things that have been like void from UNC for most of this season. It's funny because I have enjoyed watching UNC for the most part over this 6-game stretch. I really enjoy. I thought they looked really good against NC State and Virginia Tech. That was it truly was like their best ball movement all year. Against Virginia Tech was a season high in assists and a season high in made threes. Of course, it's like lurking in the back of my mind, like the Undertaker meme is like any team with a pulse and just ready to like deck me in the heels over the head with a chair. Because look, I know like the ACC is egregiously bad this year. I think Virginia Tech in particular, really fun to watch UNC just hammer those dudes over the head, but it's basically an A10 roster. I've been saying this on podcasts. If Virginia Tech was wearing a LaSalle jersey, we wouldn't think anything differently of it. I don't even if I said they were wearing a Davidson jersey, that would probably be an insult to Davidson. Even the talent level is. I think Mike Young's a good coach. Get that man some NIL because this roster stinks. Just the league as a whole is so down to where I find myself wondering what's real and what's not. But at the same time, I think. I honestly don't know enough about X's and O's to say how much of it is a schematic shift. At least from my eye, it seems like Carolina's been finding more success out of different horns actions, and they've gotten more creative, even getting whether it's Lubin or whether it's Withers touches. Sometimes they'll have RJ come set a down screen for Lubin, he'll cut to the rim, and if it's Cadeau with the ball, it might lead to an easy look at the basket off a lob, things like that. Of just it's nothing overly complex, but just wasn't really, it was either actions we weren't seeing early on in conference play or teams were taking away the first option and then helping off and clogging the paint. Because that's what Duke did at first matchup was obviously y'all have length up and down the court, take away the first option. You had both Knipple and Proctor in the gaps, and it didn't matter who's guarding RJ because there's no space for him to operate. So just having the shooting threats emerge with whether it's Withers or Seth Trimble's knocking down threes again, Drake Powell he's been making his corner threes as well, has just completely opened up the offense.
Yeah, look, your team offense efficiency on KenPom is 20th in the country. And I know that you guys, like you said, the 6 games, it's a nice 6-game winning streak, but who you played, it can be argued, but also that'd be hypocritical to me to say that as a Duke fan, as we rolled against Wake Forest, who's, fallen off a cliff. We killed Miami, killed Florida State, and this run as well. So it's impressive to me because, regardless, you're 14-11 before this win streak started. It seemed like once the news that Hubert was coming back officially, it kind of felt like the clouds over the program just kind of parted, and the team and the coaching staff started playing more loose. There was nothing to lose because they had next year, if that makes sense.
That's actually a pretty good point. I hadn't thought of that notion because after the loss against Clemson, I was like, dude, this team is dead. We got 20-pieced by Clemson and we could have lost by 30. It was I never thought I would see honestly a day where like my team would straight up be outclassed by Clemson. Like Victor Lockett had our front court in hell. That man was on one that game, which does make me feel a little bit better because he gave you offense as well. Like Clemson is really good, but it just like not even being competitive for most of that game was tough to watch. To where, I've been pretty critical of Hubert this season. I think like the roster construction, even going back to this past April and May, is a huge like black eye on his tenure and even his resume thus far. Like the imbalance, just the front court is nowhere near up to like typical Carolina standards. But I will give him credit for like keeping the locker room together. And I think part of it is like going to, I think the next UNC game after that Clemson loss was at Syracuse, which like Syracuse is a team that's pretty much quit on the season. So maybe you just needed to get one to be like, okay, we still got something here. We're not completely dead to get it together. But yeah, still like it was, I do give Hubert credit for keeping the locker room together and not being afraid to try even like a new starting lineup late in the season.
Yeah,
Even if
I was going to say that's a perfect segue to what I was going to ask you, Riley, was about the lineup the past 5 games. Cadeau, RJ Davis, Drake Powell, Van Allen Lubin, and Jalen Withers has played 24% of the time. And the second most is Davis at the 1 with N. Jackson at the 2, Trimble at the 3, and Powell playing the stretch 4 with Washington at the 5. And that's something I really like for you guys because the joke on UNC all year is obviously the size, but if UNC's pace, I've said it since the first game of the season, that keeps UNC in games. So when you play small ball and you lean into that pace, it shows a winning formula.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think like that second lineup that you mentioned with Drake at the 4, that's still like, I don't know. I like getting Ian Jackson on the court as much as possible. That would be, I want him to get just the keys to play 30 plus minutes like the rest of the year. I know he's been a little bit up and down. And at this point, his handle's like not quite good enough to like, he gets to a step back 3 really easily. And he's usually good at hitting them, but he's not like, his handle's not quite good enough to where you're like, oh, he's going to blow by his man or whatever. But yeah, I like when you get, I still think that small ball lineup can be effective in spurts, but it is nice to have the counter with like Withers. I've been joking and calling it a year 6 breakout because this is his 6th year of college basketball. And it's like by far the most consistent I've ever seen him play, and not like he's really limited his turnovers. He's not trying to do too much. I think it's hilarious whenever Withers catches that corner 3. You know, when you're playing pickup and you first get in the gym, you like change into you're changing into your basketball shoes. Maybe guys are already shooting around or whatever. And as soon as you step on the court, it's like, yo, let me see that. And someone passes it to you and it's just like no hesitation, first shot warm up. That's like I feel like that's like how Withers shoots it all the time. It's just super casual. Like I'm just getting warmed up, but it's been going in. Like just it's something about watching him shoot. It's like for some reason it looks so nonchalant, but it's like it's been really exciting just to see. He's like knocking down off the dribble 3s, which I truly never thought I would see. So yeah, there's definitely been some bright spots, and even just like having a counter to playing the 4 guards or whatever, you know?
Yeah, Jalen Withers sometimes looks like Nas Reed out there. He's trying to be big jelly over there with the step back 3 at 6'9", and you're like, where is this coming from? His dad's tweeting from his Twitter account. He's hitting step back 3s, and it's just like, what is going on with this man? He's all of a sudden become one of the most interesting men in college basketball with just the way his Twitter accounts run and the way he plays, but in a good way with the way he plays, because him and Lubin for you guys during the win streak, I mean, they're putting up double digits. I know Withers had like 5 points against Virginia Tech. It was a blowout, but Lubin carried that weight, and we've seen Withers pick up pieces that other guys have left on the floor as well.
Yeah, I think Lubin, it's so weird because like both of those guys, I would say their play was so frustrating for 90% of the season. I think Lubin, one of the biggest criticisms on him is his hands. Like he's fumbled a lot of passes anytime he's getting hit on the roll. He's fumbled rebounds, and on top of it, he's kind of a black hole offensively. Like you get him the ball, he's not really looking to pass. I think his assist rate for his career is like comically low. His assist rate is something you'd expect of like a pure rim runner like Cliff Amorier type. But even the past couple games, he's made a couple reads off of short rolls where it's like, oh, this is nice to see some development here. And it just looks like he's playing with more confidence and finishing at the rim stronger. I would still say, like, looking at next year for Carolina, I believe they should and will go for a starting caliber big in the portal, just since Lubin is like he's listed at a very generous 6'8", but it's been nice to see him at least string together some good performances and find a role where it's like, okay, he's basically our physical big who can bang a little bit in the paint and can score around the basket. And he's like sneaky bouncy too. There are times on putbacks where I'm like, I've seen him like just throw down a couple putback dunks. It still surprises me every time that he has that in his bag, you know?
Yeah. Look, I have another question for somebody on the roster. When you talk about still looking for a big man to fill that void, Elliot Cadeau, that's a guy that he's kind of as a Duke fan looking on Twitter, that's probably like the 50-50 split of the fan base, pro or anti-Cadeau. Look, he had 12 assists against Virginia Tech, but he had 2 points. Well, I think honestly that's a good ratio for him. I joked on my show last night that I was like, hey, him scoring 2 points and 12 assists, he should shoot 2 to 3 times a game at most and let everybody else score, and he facilitates. What are your thoughts with Elliot Cadeau and the way he's played? Not maybe for this win streak, but also just your take for the season that he's had for UNC.
I mean, I think the best word I can use to describe him is an enigma. Like, there's a reason why I'm trying to think, like, when I think about the players at UNC who fans have been the most split over the years, like, people are really split on Leaky Black for almost all 5 years of his career. Caleb Love, of course, is probably the most polarizing of the past, like, 5 to 10 years. Cadeau definitely feels like he's up there, though. I think there's a contingent of fans that are like, I'm ready for this kid to move on. He turns it over too much. His jumper's broken. Then there's the other side that's like, no, the passing flashes are special. If you get this kid a lob threat, and if he can continue to make strides or even just like shoot without hesitation, there's a pathway for him to become like a really good point guard. I mean, I think he's averaging 10 and 6.5 at this point, or like close to 10, 6, something like that, to where like not bad numbers by any stretch. I think it's just it's still the turnovers and shooting concerns that like have me a little wary. That's like, can that be fixed in Chapel Hill? You know, are we going to see that happen either next year or the following year if he sticks around in Chapel Hill? Maybe we do. I think he honestly looks better shooting off the bounce than off the catch. When he shoots off the catch, it almost looks like he's still overthinking it, whereas off the bounce, when it's more in rhythm, he's hit a couple like off the bounce threes this year that are like, oh, that actually looked smooth. That looked like New Heights Lightning Elliot Cadeau, like right before the reclass when he was just like stunting on dudes in EYBL play. So yeah, he's someone where I don't know how I feel about him going forward. I think if he's back next year, you know, I could see a path for him being good and continuing to progress and everything, but I still would probably have like some of the same, a little bit of hesitation penciling him and being like, okay, this is the year he makes a leap, you know, just because I kind of thought it would be this year. So he's still question marks around him, but I don't know. I would say I'd like him to score more than 2 points. Like if he can give you 8 to 11, I would say that would be ideal, just because you need him to be a threat to even help RJ, like not have more attention. You know, if even that Florida State game, like they were sagging off of him until he hit 2 threes. Like no one's 10 feet within 10 feet from him, you know?
Yeah. I mean, look, his passing ability with what UNC's pace is borderline special. I mean, it reminds me of like Kendall Marshall when he ran the one for UNC in terms of just like, even if it's a made basket, you're trying to score in transition, and Cadeau has proven that he can throw it over the top after a make and score, and that's where he's special. But yeah, the hiccups, I agree with you. He is more comfortable off the dribble than when he catches. When he catches, it's like a baseball player with the yips. It's just like, oh man, am I really supposed to do this right now? And then he does, and it's in his head. But I do think that he has value. And yeah, all jokes aside, if he did shoot, like if he could get to the rim more often and, you know, get to the foul line where it is 8 to 10 points a game and he's shooting 4 or 5 attempts, but it's, you know, within the offense, within the pace. I like him, but I wanted to know your take, Riley, as look, Duke handled business in Durham, the first matchup. Cooper Flagg took over the first 5 minutes of the game, and Duke really never looked back from there.
Yeah.
With this second matchup, first off, from my point of view, I think we're going to see double the amount of Drake Powell than we saw the first matchup. He didn't play really till the second half and was the best player for UNC in the second half. I think he's going to be instant, maybe even starting this game, instant impact for UNC. What changes do you think UNC should or will make for this matchup tomorrow?
Yeah, for one, is not start not you mentioned it, not starting Seth Trimble on Cooper Flag. Like, I love Seth. I think I have the Seth Trimble graphic tee NIL shirt. I'm contributing to our players sticking around in Chapel Hill, so this is no slight to him because yeah, I know his let's say there are family members of his that are very aware of what is said about Seth Trimble online. I love Seth. He's like one of my favorite players to interview and just like chop it up with. And just a really friendly dude. But I think his like defense this year has not really been up to par. He still has like some of the highlight reel help side blocks that are like, dang, dude, I can't believe a guard is getting up there like that. Part of it, I think, is roster construction where, in my opinion, if he played with someone like Kobe White, if Kobe was at the 1 and you have Seth at the 2, and Seth's being able to play off of a score first guard who can facilitate a little bit and on defense gets to be that point of attack defender, that's the best way to optimize Seth. But instead, for a lot of the year, he's been guarding wings and like big wings, like flag types. And even though he's strong and like generally fundamentally sound, that's just not really that's not really how best to optimize him as a defender. And instead, you probably want him chasing Con Knipple around screens, like when he gets in the game, or making sure Tyrese Proctor, like his shots are contested on those step-in threes that he gets. I'm interested to see how Carolina does choose to guard Flag, because I think, as good as Jalen Withers has been offensively, he still has a lot of struggles defensively. Like he'll be physical with Flag. Actually, I can't really. When I think about watching this Duke team, I think of it being the ball being in the Flag's hands pretty much as he wants it. Do y'all ever run Flag off of like down screens or anything?
We can run him. Well, we have basically what is like a cross screen, down screen action to where it's a cross screen for him to catch in the post. And if it's heavily denied, that he can counter that by going off the down screen at the top of the key. And that's really the bread and butter to get him the ball. Is he catches on the block, you go one-on-one, it's a layup. If you throw a double at him, it's a skip. And then if he catches top of the key, it's either he's going to shoot the three, or if you're on him, he's going to put his head down and get to the rim. And so that's just really and if you don't do that, Duke's setting the ball screen, or he's setting the ball screen, or the ball handler with the ball screen.
Yep. Okay, so some of that like cross screening action to get Flag touches, like Withers often gets lost when there's screen set for his man. Like that's what probably worries me the most, is that he's just going to be a step slow if he's guarding Flag. Like in ice, like, I mean, I trust Flag to give pretty much anybody buckets in ISO defense anyway, but I think Withers at least has the size to be a little bit bothersome. I trust Drake Powell to like get around those screens more. And I think he's the better athlete than Withers. He has probably just as long of a wingspan. He's more fleet of foot, more agile, has better just overall instincts. But at the same time, I think you're probably going to need Drake to spend a good amount of time on Knipple. So it's it's going to be give and take. Like this Duke is, what's their offense on KenPom now? Are they like top 3, third?
Yeah,
like
I think they are. I think they might be 4th. Let me pull it up. But they're the number 1 team, I think, on KenPom right now.
Yeah, like by a sizable margin.
Yeah, they're second offensively, 4th defensively. So second offensively, 4th defensively.
Yeah. I mean, they're the number 2 offense for a reason. There's a lot of ways they can burn you. So
yeah, they are
poison.
I would say for UNC, if they were going to double Flag, I've said this on multiple occasions. Like the one team that kind of figured out how to trap Flag was Kansas when Duke played them in Vegas. And it's, you trap Flag when he puts the ball on the floor. You trap him on the catch, you're letting him survey the floor, and he's going to burn you.
Oh yeah.
But when he puts the ball on the floor, we've seen it in the losses that Duke's had, where the ball's in his hands and he'll try and make a move, and then that late defender comes over and kind of messes up his timing, so he loses his footing, or he throws a bad pass or gets ripped. That's where he can be susceptible to turning the ball over. Is he's going to go 1-2 to the right, to the right. Off ball guy comes from behind. He's going to spin right into him, and then you can go the other way. So if UNC is listening, because I'm sure they are, that hey, trap him on the dribble and you have a better chance. But even saying that, Duke's, I mean, they're loaded. I mean, Knipple has been playing like a first-team All-ACC guy in the last month of this, basically conference play, really. He's shooting like 42% from 3, averaging like 16 points a game in the last 5. And then, oh, by the way, for like my pro-Duke argument, since you're the UNC guy on the show, what Duke killed UNC at in the first matchup was just simple ball screen action that UNC was over helping the roll. They were so afraid of Malawach catching the lob that Duke was killing them on that skip pass to the corner, hitting the open three. If UNC tries to stay put for that open three, Malawach is playing the best ball he's been playing all year in the last 5 games, to where now you're giving up the lob that you didn't want to give up in the first game.
Because it's Van Allen Lubin, 6'6" Van Allen Lubin trying to – not only is he trying to disrupt the lob, like a lot of times, sometimes our guards aren't the best at getting around ball screens either. So he's already starting at a disadvantage. Yeah, the UNC defense has still been really pretty brutal over this stretch. I thought Miami's not playing serious basketball right now. They're so bad, dude. They're like unmatched. Like they have much more talent than Virginia Tech, but like I think Mike Young would coach circles around. I can't remember the dude's the interim guy at Miami right now, but something Courtney, Bob Courtney, maybe Jim Courtney.
It sounds about right. It is Courtney though. I'm pretty sure. I just know every time he coaches, it looks like he's going to have a heart attack every defense possession, where he's just like this every time. Like, you just cannot imagine like worse defense. That whole I joked on my film breakdown with Miami that the team needs to be investigated for their performances. Like they're the Black Sox. They're throwing games over there defensively.
The show we do with Sleepers, that's sponsored by Trilly Donovan and the Burner Ball Discord, Ball Up Top. One of the prompts we had yesterday was if Miami played with 6 players on the court against Duke, what would the final score be? And we still were like, yeah, Duke still. I think the consensus was like Duke still wins by double digits. One of the guys, Eric Fawcett, who was on the show. He's a great Twitter follow as well, does some coaching across the D1 landscape, and does a bunch of film type breakdowns as well. Eric was like thinking schematically of it. He was like, oh yeah, just Miami could have one dude cherry picking and the other 5 guys are in their half court defense. But Jim Root was like, basically, well, if they have one guy cherry picking, then this is still like a historically bad defense and Duke is going to score every time, so it doesn't matter.
That's actually a great point. I would take 20 plus with 5 on 6.
But yeah, all that is to say is I thought Miami got pretty good looks against UNC, just couldn't make anything because they stink. To where like, yeah, the defensive questions are still, there's like really no code to crack against Duke for UNC defensively. I think the hope lies in either getting Malawach into foul trouble and hoping you can contain Pat better, because I think Malik Brown's probably not expected to play, which it would be a very Duke thing to do for Malik Brown to be going through warm-ups and all of a sudden he's totally fine to play this game, which would annoy me. But I hope all that to say, hope he has a speedy recovery and everything, just like come back in the ACC tournament. But you probably hope you can get Malawach into foul trouble and just hope you can get out and transition a little bit more and keep pace that way, and that you got to make a bunch of threes, because I'm sure Duke's probably going to try to help one pass away, pack the paint again, and dare UNC to score at the rim, to where you got to just, you got to have your guys creating separation, whether it's RJ or Ian, and you got to have, like, if they are able to get dribble penetration, Drake Powell's got to knock down those catch and shoot threes for UNC to have any sort of chance.
Well, that was going to be my follow-up question there, Riley, was like, what does UNC need to do? And to go off of that, like in Jackson, I'm a huge fan of. I called him UNC's, to a certain degree, Isaiah Evans. Like when he gets going, watch out. Like he's going to take over a moment. He's going to take over a segment of the game. He's an integral part of this team, but he's so fun to watch, and he's a lightning bolt. It's just the game against Duke, I think he had like 6 points, and then the next game he had 0, and I think the game after that he had 3. But then you have the flip side of that, where he can score your 15 plus, and that UNC team with his speed, what he can do with Cadeau being able to push the pace with RJ Davis and Drake Powell, and like we've talked about, that's a fun UNC team. Like I know UNC only has one quad 1 win. We all know it, but you lost by 3 to Michigan State. Like you were down 15 at Kansas, came back, took the lead, and lost that game. But the Florida game in Charlotte, you were down, came back. Like you've been in big games with really good teams.
True.
Just haven't sealed the deal, to where maybe the 6-game win streak, with it being Duke and the history that comes with this. As a Duke fan, I take nothing for granted when it comes to this rivalry. And it's not even due to 2022 ruining Coach K's night. It's when I was a kid or a preteen, and it was J.J. Redick and Sheldon Williams senior night, and here comes freshman Tyler Hansbrough ruining the moment. ever since then, I've been scarred for life and with this rivalry that UNC can beat Duke with any team because of freshman Tyler Hansbrough ruining my happiness as a child.
Thank you for sharing that memory. I'm glad that it reminds me that there have been better times. There have been better days for this program. Yeah, it's a good point. I think, I don't know. I still am not expecting UNC to win. I think they should at least be able to keep it close. Like maybe I would love for it to be a close game with like 4 minutes to go. That would be, I'm not calling it a moral victory because my standard for UNC is much higher than that, but I at least wouldn't be like wanting to just, I don't know, turn the game. The best part, I've said that the best part about that first game was I made cookies at halftime. That was my favorite part of the evening. We had some friends over, and I was like, we had some break and bake cookies in the fridge. I was like, well, I'm just going to make some break and bake cookies and lift everybody's spirit a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. If I had to give a score prediction, it's tough because like there's just that the Duke run where they can hit a second gear and it's over to where I'm like, but these games can also be ugly. I think it probably ends up being like 81-72 for Duke, if I had to guess, something along those lines. My heart says like, oh, UNC keeps it in the 70s, then Ian Jackson hits a game winner or something, and it's a storybook ending to this, a storybook way to cap off a 7-game win streak to end the regular season. But yeah, I think the rational side of me feels like UNC can hang around for a little bit, but ultimately the size advantage, the way to exploit the defense is just too much for them to overcome.
Yeah, I agree. I think Duke does win too, and I think it is going to be due to a run. The Wake Forest game, for example, Duke was up 7 in the second half with like 17 minutes to go in the game, and they got up as much as 40 because Cooper Flagg took over the game. And Wake Forest's defense that's the one strength they've had all year because their offense has been so bad. Not saying that's going to happen at UNC where it's going to be a 7-point game. It's going to go to 40, but I think that UNC is going to have their juices flowing. The first half is going to be a pretty good battle. Duke was down on the road at Louisville this year and came back and won that game by double digits. And so I can see Duke and UNC being in a close one going in the second half to where Duke will have a run and win this game. And I say that biasly, but also that's just kind of how I feel with what's Duke's been showing me this whole season as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Sorry. Yeah. You won't get a ton of pushback on me from that, but yeah, I just hope it's I don't know. I need some chippiness back in this rivalry. I need it to be a close enough game where we see some trash talking because that was one of the weirdest takeaways from that first matchup was like, does Cooper Flagg even care about this? Like I don't think he's talking nearly as much trash as people thought he would based on like what he did at Montverde and what he did on the EYBL circuit. Like he's seems like a likable, good dude. Like he's not this villain. I think the same way with like, I mean, Malawach seems like a good dude. It just, there's honestly, I've directed my like disdain for this Duke team. I get frustrated that guys like it's really like Sion James and Malik Brown being as big of impact guys as they were when I wasn't initially high on those transfers. And it's more so just frustrating where it's like, how did y'all just take these role players and all of a sudden they're excelling at that and then some? But yeah, it is what it is. It's been a tough year for UNC fans.
they've been great role players, very elite role players. And to talk about Flagg, I think it just shows the clip farming that comes with like AAU and that circuit of like they're always looking for those clickable things. And you see a guy like Cooper Flagg talking trash, it's going to gain traction, especially on that circuit. And so that was like everybody thinking, oh, this is going to be Christian Laettner 2.0.
Right.
And he's just not, like you said, he does at times, but they're like times that are warranted. It's not like out of pocket. And that's something that's nice to see as a competitor, but also on the flip side for UNC. Yeah. Last year, everybody on UNC's roster was mocking Duke that they're too small in Cameron. And then you go into Cameron a year later and nobody's showing that emotion that they were showing previously. And you have RJ Davis and Cadeau that were on that team. So it's like, what happened with, you know, your not pride, but your what am I looking for? Competitivism, like your competitiveness of talking. But I want to give you this last question, Riley. We'll get out of here. If UNC loses this game, they're already on the bubble. Like I think they're like the first 4 out, like the first team on the first 4 out. What do they need to do in the AC tournament to sneak in to be one of the last 4 teams in?
Short answer is win it, but I think there's a chance that if they can beat Louisville or Clemson in the ACC tournament, I think there's a good chance that the committee's just like, all right, screw it, throw them in Dayton with Arkansas. Let's get UNC versus Cal. Let's get some eyeballs on this game for the first 4, and then they probably bow out unceremoniously to a middling SEC team, and we can get started on the portal.
Look, I mean, I said it doesn't matter that you're the first 4 out. You have Bubba Cunningham that is on the committee, and I think there's going to be, hey, turn the other way. I'm just going to slide these 2 names across. One's in, one's out, and UNC's going to get in regardless. But, Riley, brother, I appreciate you coming on, man. This was a lot of fun talking Duke UNC, and hopefully for me, Duke wins, and I know obviously hopefully for you, UNC wins, but I appreciate your time, man.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me on. Look forward to hopefully collaborating in the future.